Hi, welcome to episode 14 of my free Java video course. My name is Markus Biel. Today, in this episode, I would like to show you the main method of Java. The main method, as the name implies, is the method that is used to start a program initially. However, as this course is done in a test-driven style, or TDD in short, so far we actually never used it because we start programming by writing a test, and so far we use the test to execute our code. Well, actually, as you might have guessed, at some time when you're done with development, you would want to run the program. And for this, you will need a class that has a main method. So how does this main method look? Well, it's not so different from any other method. It is a public method so that it can be started from outside of the class. It is a static method because we want to run the method without having an instance, without having an object of CarSelector, because the class CarSelector in this case here is only the executor, the frame that we use to start our program. And therefore, we also only need we don't need further instances of this class, and this is why the method is static, has to be static by definition. The method is void because it doesn't return anything, and the name must be main so that it can be found by Java. By the way, I might notice shortly, I always say noticed by Java. Well, actually what I mean is noticed by the compiler, because the compiler will compile the program to bring it into an executable form. Well, compiler is a big topic. There are huge books, if not even libraries, about compilers that you could even study compilers. So I tried to keep you away from that topic, but maybe if I keep talking about Java executing something, I maybe should now say compiler, and at a later time I might do a dedicated session on a bit of compiler details so that you know more about compilers. So anyway, okay, so back to the public static void main method. Now we add the brackets, but actually they have to contain something, because when we start our main method, we want to be able to give it arguments that the program might need to run, and this is obligatory. So these arguments, they come as input as strings, but as there can be a number of strings, this is an array here. So square brackets, and now the name of the string array, you can use any name. People usually would set here args. This is what you would see in documentation. I usually prefer arguments because this is more readable. Okay, and then of course, as always for a method, you would have the curly braces, the opening and the closing curly brace. Yeah, and that's already it for the main method. Now let's leave it empty for a moment. And now when you compile this class here, on the console using a terminal, you can execute this Java class and it will then call this main method automatically. So this is the place where you set up your whole program. In the last episode, I created a car service, so we can use this in here, car service, but technically it also works to run just the empty main method. It would just not do anything. So let me directly say new car service. No, typo, car service. Okay. And then you can call the method car service dot process. Yeah, remember? And this requires an input. By the way, just to show you what is possible in Java, you can also do all this on the fly. You can say new car service dot process. The only difference is that you will then just call the method and you will not have any variable to access the car service. If you don't need it, that might be fine. Well, the only thing missing now is a string, and I mean we could use any string here, like ABC, but I mean to make it a bit more interesting, we could now take the string array, and as this is an array, of course we need a for each loop, which I also introduced already. So let's say string argument for 1 colon arguments. So this is iterating through our array that will be given to us when the program runs at runtime. Opening curly brace again, and closing curly brace. Okay, that was formatting it. Okay, and now I can take that argument and so dynamically call the process method, dynamically creating an object. Well, this is always creating a new object, so I mean I wanted to show you that this is possible, but of course it would probably be smarter to just create one object and then put a reference on this object. So this would be, from the performance perspective, probably faster. But it's really hard to talk about performance because the compiler these days is really smart. It often recognizes stuff, and while it compiles, it can optimize your code. So talking about performance is a topic by itself, and you would usually test for performance. Just by saying this will be fast or slow, you can hardly do. But again, performance, yeah, I could also do a course only on performance, really a big topic. Yeah. So now I created an instance of car service, and in the main method I have this for each loop, and then for each argument that is given to our main method when the program is run, we call the car service. Now let's execute this, because now we can run this without actually a test. Well, I mean, in this episode I want to show you the main method, but I mean what I said still holds true. You should always start programming with writing a test. But anyway, see, now I have a run car selector.main, and I can execute the main method directly. Here, this shows me the console directly in my IDE. Well, it seems like there's nothing printed. This could either be because in the class, remember we had the logging. The logging could be deactivated, but so far I remember it's still active. It should log on 1 at the moment. Well, the reason this doesn't print anything is a different reason. And this reason is, well, we didn't give our program any arguments. So, I mean, this is running. This is not throwing any exceptions. By the way, we'll talk about exceptions very soon. But it's empty, so the for loop will actually not be executed at all when the program is run. So we will directly jump to line 9 or 10 just after it, so the program will directly exit. But we can change this easily using our IDE. I can click on Run, and now I say Edit Configurations, and here I can configure how my main class, see this also contains always the full package name, so how this is run, I can give it some program arguments. So on the console that would be car selector and then white space and then the program arguments. So let me put here a few car names, BMW, Porsche, Mercedes, yeah, and then okay. And then let me run the main method again. And now you see we have 3 warning loggings: processing car BMW, processing car Porsche, and processing car Mercedes. Yeah, so that's the main method. One more thing, just really slightly mentioned. What is also possible and not many people know is you can do this. Now what does that mean? And see, all the code is still working. This thingy with the 3 dots here is called a varargs, like a variable argument parameter, which means when this is defined like this, the code, the method that would call our main method, well, in this case it's directly started by the virtual machine itself. This would have the ability to directly put in strings that will be converted automatically by the compiler to an array. So this is very close to an array, but it's like just more convenient for whoever calls that method. Just so that you have seen, this would also be possible. The question is, does it make sense? Because, well, normally you would not call the main method directly. So if you don't call the main method directly, it doesn't make a difference. But of course, you can write a test and you can call the method directly. And in this case, it would make a difference because you could directly call the method with just one string. Yeah, but let me talk about varargs arguments at a later time. Okay, so let's re-add. Let's make this an array again. Okay. So now string array arguments. Okay, so that much about the main method. Now maybe a bit of background knowledge for you. So I don't know if my Java course is actually the first Java course you ever listened to. I guess in most cases you would probably already have heard another course or read a book about Java. And in this case, you might not directly understand why I didn't talk about the main methods so far. I mean, this is episode 14 already. So let me give you the reason for this. Because I really decided to do so specifically because this is really a main decision for me. Okay, so the reason is, first of all, I think in the very first lesson, when you have never heard about Java and its keywords, it's hard to directly be confronted with public, static, void. This is just the name of the method, would be okay, but public, static, void, and then even an array, all this stuff for very first lesson in Java is a bit much, I think. Now in our episode 14, you should by now know what public means, what static means, what void means, and we have also talked about arrays. So I hope that by now you can easily follow my explanations and you understand what all this means. Okay. And then second, also, this is a static method. And I told you, I think various times, Java is an object-oriented language where you usually focus on creating objects. But static, this method is not object-oriented. There's just one version of this method. I mean, of course, it might make sense, but yeah, as you should try to avoid static wherever possible, I think showing you a static method in the very first Java lesson might lead you to the wrong conclusions. Yeah, and then also, next reason is, even though, I mean, the main method is on the one hand very important, because you use it to actually execute your program, to actually get your program running. For any program at hand, you would have only one main method. And usually programs would consist of hundreds, if not thousands of classes, and just one main method. And last but not least, this counts for Java SE, but if you program a server application, what you usually do is you don't re-implement all the server code, but you would use, for example, an open source server implemented in Java, for example, Tomcat, and such a server, has already been implemented for you, and so you use that as an infrastructure, even though it's software, and so the Java code you write will run within that Java software infrastructure. And therefore, when you program code for a server, you usually don't write even a main method at all. So, for example, in my case, I have programmed in Java for pretty much 14 years now, but I have maybe, I don't know, 10 times, 20 times, well, definitely less than 100 times I have programmed a main method, while I have programmed really thousands of classes, I'm sure. So the main method is not so important then. And yeah, so we started with writing a test anyway, so you are also able to run your code, at least for testing, without a main method. Of course, the tests, for example, let's look at this one. This one is based on the framework JUnit, and JUnit by itself is a Java program. So JUnit does have a main method, of course it does, but you don't see it. All you see is the test methods that we write, and these test methods, they plug into the whole JUnit mechanism, but so we don't have to write the main method. This is why just using a framework like JUnit is so handy, because it saves us from writing our own main method. Yeah, and I promised you can actually even execute even a main method as if it was a regular method. Now here you see I have prepared that. Here's an array of string arguments, BMW and Porsche. So the static method is called with the given arguments. Let's execute the test. And yeah, you see this works just as well. Processing car, BMW, processing car, Porsche. And as one last thing, maybe, you see I could change the signature of the method, like I could say the method returns some int, in this case just as an example 42. I could even not make it static anymore, I can change it in any way. This is okay as it's a Java method. It just will not be recognized as a regular main method. So this will not allow us to execute it as a Java program, but our test can still execute it as it was before. Now this is returning something, so we don't use the return value, but we could. Int return value equals 2, yeah. So you see, it's really, we're calling the main method returning something, and we can still call it from the test. But if we want this to be really a main method that will allow us to start a program, then the signature must look like this. Okay, so I think that's pretty much all I can tell you about the main method. I'm really happy that we were finally able to have a look at the main methods. So now with the 14 episodes that I've done so far, I think this course now really has gone quite far. By now you should really know quite a lot about Java and should be able to write your own programs by now. I will, of course, add a few more things, but by now you should really be able to write your own small programs. Okay, so thanks for watching. I would be very happy if you could like the video in the bottom right on YouTube. And of course, you can also subscribe to my YouTube channel. I will add many more free videos to this course, and I hope you enjoy them. Send me some feedback and let me know what you think. And yeah, thanks, and see you next time.